Intel today announced the Tiger Lake launch, and in this video I'm going to walk you through the part numbering scheme of the processors that has been launched under the Tiger Lake. Just to give you a very quick idea, and you can make out of what that part number means. And these part numbers are going like i7, i5, i3, and then I will separate it into two parts. The earlier that was supposed to be U series, Intel is now calling them UP3 series, and then what was Y series is now UP4 series. And basically these two classes have different power consumption kind of thing. We call it a TDP, thermal dissipation power. So Y series is the 7 to 5 watt, which you can do potentially without the use of fan. Those are the fanless processor. They come in ultra light thin, very thin, without any use of the fan. And U series, this has a typical range of 15 watt, but it has a wide range from 12 to 25 watt depending upon how the system manufacturer manufactures it, but they are typically supposed to be 15 watt. So with these two categories, they are differentiated with the number 5 absent or present. In all the Y series number, you will see something like 1160 or 30 or 20, and this series will have an additional 5. Just remember that that 5 means it relates to the higher power or the lower power series, the fanless and with fan series. The next thing that you need to keep in mind is that this introduction of this number G, which is corresponding to the graphics use, that relates to the performance of the graphics. And we have two numbers right now, there may be more later on, is G7 and G4. And what it means is that this number 7 here indicates a higher number of execution units in the graphics. Higher the number of execution units, more is the graphics power. So G7 is typically 96 execution units, but it also includes some part that has 80 execution units. And G4 relates to the half this maximum 96, which is 44, 48 execution units. And same way in the low power as well, G7 and G4. This I have listed the number of execution units in the GPU. And we have either 90 or 80 for G7 and 48 units for G4. So G4 will have half the performance in graphics for gaming and etc. So that's one thing to keep in mind. Now let's go on and decode the rest of the things. 11 is obviously the 11th generation, belongs to the Tiger Lake. That's what it is. For example, 10, 9 and so on and so, they will be the lower generation, and the next generation will have part number starting with 12. The last thing that you need is these numbers 8, 6, 3, 2, 1. They are, if it's a higher number, means it's the best performing. So obviously Intel is thinking that there could be at least at the most one more than 8 in this series. 8 will mean the best performing CPU. So let's go with 8 and then look at here, and these are the numbers that correspond to the CPU. The number of cores, the number of hyperthreads, the cache memory and the frequency. So at the top of the line we have 1185G7. This number was not seen until today, at least I did not see that. We have seen this 1165G7 coming into different benchmarks, but 1185G7 is probably the best of the silicons and best performing one. Has a top frequency, nominal frequency 3 GHz, and has 12 MB cache and 4 cores and 8 hyperthreads, and the things keep going down, 2.8 GHz, 2.4, 2 GHz. Once you go to 1115, we reduce the number of the cores and threads, I think 4 hyperthreads here, and we also go down into its cache memory. But we bump up the clock frequency because now with the only two cores, it can run at higher clock frequency while still maintaining the thermal dissipation power. We listed here the GPU frequencies as well. As we go down into it, the GPU frequencies also come down a little bit. And the same thing here in the lower power version, we have 116 in here, 320. Now, one thing that you need to keep in mind is that in the lower power part, the base frequency is very low. It normally is running at a very low frequency, and to run at this very low frequency, it needs very less core voltage power. And when it's running at a low core voltage, it needs very less power. That's how we are able to keep it cool at 7 watt or 8 watt or under 15 watt. But if you look at the core clock frequency, this I listed out the turbo clock frequency, which is when the demand or the load increases, it tries to increase its clock frequency. This frequency is not too much behind a regular processor. So if your demand is for a very small amount of power, for example, you are opening up a new software, suddenly you need a lot of CPU power, then it can quickly jump up to that, but it cannot last for a long time, because that's when the processor will start heating up and the frequency will come down to 1.2 gigahertz. But it could be still that small amount of time could be good enough to open a new software and something like that. But if you want, like if you run some demanding software for an extended period of time, this one, the U series, is the one that you would like to have. So this is a very quick overview of the part numbering for Tiger Lake. At some point of time, I'll also dig down to look into its relative performance. But from these, you can make out that what is going to be the relative performance under normal load. For example, you can expect like this 2.8 is 3 gigahertz, it's a 200 megahertz, maybe a 5% or so, maybe even less performance improvement in here. We are looking at like another 10% difference between this and this, and so on and so forth. This one we have less number of cores, so the single core performance will be good. But and then of course we can make out that if you are looking at the gaming, go for the G7. If you are not looking into gaming at all, like me, I don't play those video games, I'm okay with the G4 one and then pay a less price for that processor. And the same thing for the low power series, depending upon you want gaming or do not want gaming. Probably if you want gaming, you are not going to either this one, go with either this one or one of these three processors, but not for the G4 one. So this is some of the quick overview that you can base the procurement or purchase of your next laptop. Thanks for taking a look.